redistricting decision. New district maps are released on the heels of a special election and ahead of the presidential election. We'll speak with a reporter on the impact these changes will have. Hello and welcome to Empire State Weekly. I'm John Gray in Albany. New York's redistricting process continues to play out with the changes potentially making an impact in state elections. Here's a look at the new congressional district map proposed by the state's Independent Redistricting Commission. Its members voting to send the map on to the state legislature this week. Now, according to the commission members, the maps are roughly 90% similar to the current maps we've been using, just central New York being more impacted by this. Changes coming on the heels of the recent special election in the 3rd district that saw Democrat Tom Suozzi win the seat that was left vacant by the ousting of the now former Congressman George Santos. We're joined now by Jared Gans, a reporter with the political news website The Hill, giving additional insight into the special election and how it might impact the balance of power at the federal level. Jared, I know you're busy. Thanks for taking time to talk to us today.
Of course, thanks for having me.
Let me jump right in with the low-hanging fruit, which is I heard a lot of people calling this special election in New York like a bellwether. Look, the Democrat did well. That's going to indicate what's going to happen for other races. Is that a fair way to describe it, or the fact that Tom Suozzi had held the seat before, was a very well-known name? Do you have to kind of continue to weigh that in as you look at what happened here in New York?
Absolutely. It's a bit of a complicated question, and I'd say it's somewhere in the middle. Suozzi's win was definitely a big victory for Democrats. It came in the aftermath of George Santos, the Republican, being expelled from his House seat. So it was definitely seen as a really big pickup opportunity for Democrats, and it was a good win for Suozzi. He won by more than 7 points. That said, it was a special election in just one district. Those who go to the polls are the most likely of likely voters, so it is not necessarily as transferable for looking at the rest of what the rest of the country might be for November. And there was also the factor that there was a snowstorm that came in on the day of the election, and that certainly could have affected turnout. It's a bit difficult to know for sure how that affected things, but there are definitely some different factors that may have limited the impact of what that can tell us for the future.
Without reading too much into it, did we get a little glimpse into what a playbook might be for other people in other races? And what I mean is, immigration is one area that it's high on the polls. People are really concerned about illegal immigration, what's happening at the border. Suozzi, rather than try to defend sanctuary cities, he seemed to lean in towards, no, I agree, we need to control the border, we need to do better. He almost took away that club to beat him with because he sort of pivoted a little bit to the right on it, or am I reading that wrong?
Oh, absolutely. So, and Democrats said that this can be a playbook for what other Democratic candidates are looking for the rest of the year. And this is one way that this really could be a takeaway for how campaigns could be run through November, that Suozzi was getting attacks from Republicans, his Republican opponent, Mazi Pilip, for Biden's immigration policies, which are pretty widely seen as unpopular. And instead of standing by that or trying to avoid the topic of immigration altogether, he tried to go on offense and push back. And he declared his support for the bipartisan legislation that was reached in the Senate, calling for addressing the situation at the border. And he emphasized his willingness to be bipartisan and work across the aisle to try to address the issue. He said that he was going to be willing to talk about it, and strategists said that this was a good playbook for him, and it helped ensure his victory.
It feels like Democrats have flipped the script a little bit in a broader sense where you are in D.C., where, yes, the immigration stuff was tied in with the Ukraine and Israel aid. It was all kind of one big, one-size-fits-all bill. But Republicans didn't go for it because they didn't like some of the nuance in there, the devil in the details. But now it seems like I'm hearing Democrats saying, hey, they've been yelling about fixing the border. We give them a bill to help fix the border, and they don't want to vote for it. So who really doesn't want to fix the border? Is we're going to see more of that, you think, at a national level with Democrats saying, we're trying to fix it?
Absolutely, you could definitely see this. This could be an opportunity for Democrats to try to change the narrative around the issue of immigration, which has been really seen as one of the Biden administration's weaker issues that a lot of Americans disagree with him on. But after the bill that was reached in a bipartisan agreement by both sides failed to advance in the Senate because of Republican opposition to it, Democrats could have a new attack line to go after Republicans. As you said, that Republicans talked a lot about the need to secure the border and address what is happening down there. And when there was this bipartisan deal reached, they did not go for it, and they were not willing to get it across the finish line.
For those who think, oh, this was just one race, it's not a big deal. Yes, true, but the numbers are tighter than people may think in the House, right? The Republicans can't lose a lot of seats, or they're going to lose the House again, right?
Absolutely. So with Swazi's win, once he is sworn in later this month, the difference in the margin will be 219 Republicans in the House to 213 Democrats. So that means already Republicans could not afford to lose many votes to pass the measures that they want to in the House. But now it's going to get even tighter. And Democrats are very determined to try to win back full control of the House. In November, the seat that Swazi was able to win, it was one of a handful of seats throughout the country that voted for President Biden in 2020 and then elected a Republican representative in 2022. So Democrats are really going to hone in on these seats as they try to take back the majority in November.
We only got a minute or so left, but since I've got you and you're down there, I would imagine some of the best conversations you have don't happen at a press conference, more in the hallways of what's happening in D.C. Joe Biden didn't have the best week in the last week or so with that report coming out saying an older man, bad memory. He kind of even got beat up by Democrats on the more liberal media side of things. Are you getting any read that there's any push to replace Joe Biden, or do you think our candidates on both sides are locked in? What are you hearing anything that we're not hearing in Albany?
Well, it's an interesting dynamic of so many people show in polls that they don't want President Biden or former President Trump to become their party's nominees. But with each passing day, it seems likely we hear murmurs, and President Biden is facing a primary challenge from Dean Phillips, but Phillips has not really gained much traction in the primaries that have been held so far. So there will be talk about changing the nominees from Biden and Trump, but with each day that passes, unless something changes in either their decision making, it seems more and more likely that we are headed for a rematch in 2024.
Well, Jared, I have to believe there's going to be history books written about what happens in the next 7 or so months, and you're right there in D.C., right in the middle of it. So enjoy your front row seat for whatever happens with our politics.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, Jared Gans from the Hill. Appreciate your time today and your insight on what's happening both here in New York and Albany and also in D.C. One of the more tedious parts of the college experience, seeing some frustrating delays right now. When we come back, we'll hear from the SUNY Chancellor on the delays in the federal aid or FAFSA system, what some colleges are now doing trying to help the students out and getting the aid they need. Welcome back to Empire State Weekly. I'm John Gray in Albany. As the federal student aid continues to experience delays, some colleges are reportedly taking action. A report revealing that some schools across the country providing students with their own financial aid forms. Now, the forms do not replace the free application for federal students known as FAFSA, but they may provide an estimate on aid offers for the 2024-2025 school year. Report reveals the colleges and universities handing out their own forms say that they are similar to FAFSA. Department of Education had a rough rollout of its simplified version of the FAFSA forms, meaning that students will have to wait longer for their financial aid package or offers. Department of Education says it will not be sending students FAFSA information to schools until March. Joining me now to discuss the current state of financial aid situation, John King, Chancellor of the SUNY system. Mr. King, thanks for coming on today. We appreciate it.
Thanks for the opportunity.
For those who are not, scholars in FAFSA and its aid, what's happening? What's the problem? What's the delay for families right now?
So the free application for federal student aid is the gateway to accessing federal financial support like the Pell Grant program. It's also the gateway to accessing state aid, campus-based aid. Historically, the FAFSA has been very long, and that has been a source of frustration for folks. And so Congress committed to shorten the FAFSA. The Education Department was tasked with making the form fewer questions and working with the IRS to make it easy for folks to import information from the IRS. They've done that, but as a result of that effort to shorten the FAFSA, to simplify it, the FAFSA was delayed until December. As a result, the whole schedule for financial aid is behind. And so higher ed institutions, including SUNY, are trying to figure out ways to make it as painless as possible for families. We're actually going to move back our deadline for folks to make deposits for the coming year to make sure that they have time to get information on what financial aid is available to them.
And for those who haven't sent a kid to college, I've got one at SUNY Buffalo right now. This is huge because it really affects where you're going to pull money from if you're going to supplement aid you might be getting, right? I mean, these dates are a big deal to families and students, correct?
Absolutely. And so traditionally, we've said to families, here's your financial aid package. We need to know by May 1st if you're going to make a deposit for the coming year, if you're committed to the school. We're going to move that back. We've told our campuses to move it back at least till May 15th. Some may move it back further than that. We want to make sure families have time to figure out the right choice for them based on good information on the financial aid available. And look, at SUNY, 53% of our students go tuition free because of the Pell Grant program, the state tuition assistance program. So it's really important to our SUNY families to know their financial aid picture.
Is this going to solve it this year? I mean, it'd be easy to play blame game and blame the feds for whatever's gone wrong here, but do you feel like this is just a glitch, and once they get past this now, a year from now, we won't be having these issues and the dates will be able to stay where they were?
That's exactly right. This really should be a one-year problem. And we have heard feedback from families that the FAFSA is indeed simpler, that if you have all your materials ready, you can get through it much more quickly than you used to be able to. So that's the good news. But it is disruptive for this year, and we just want to make sure our institutions are looking for opportunities to be flexible around special programs on campus that used to be tied to a particular FAFSA deadline. We've got to be flexible so that families have every opportunity to participate.
How is, since I've been talking to you, how is SUNY doing, the system as a whole, in terms of enrollment and those things? Is it holding strong? Are you losing some kids, or where are things landing these days?
You know, the great news is this year enrollment was up across the board for the first time in a decade. Enrollment was up in our four-year institutions. Enrollment was up in our community colleges, up over 1% across the board, and up over 4% in first-year enrollment, which is a really good sign about the future. So we're feeling good about that. We've got to make sure that every New Yorker knows there's a place for them at SUNY, and such a wide range of options. If you're really passionate about climate, we've got our environmental science and forestry campus in Syracuse. If you're really interested in research, maybe UB or Stony Brook is the right place for you. If you are passionate about the arts, maybe it's SUNY Purchase. If you want to go to a beautiful campus on the lake, maybe it's Oswego that's the right place for you. But we've got such a range of options.
Have we also gotten away from I'm going to go back because you referenced Oswego. That's where I went 40 years ago. 40 to the day almost. You know, back then it was like, well, you got these elite private schools, but if that's too much expense, whatever, maybe you go to a SUNY school. I feel like that's changed over the years with the SUNYs in terms of the respect they get and who their graduates are, where they go with their careers. It's really grown where they're a first choice, where people could go to a private school. Maybe money's not even the issue, but they look at a SUNY school like, a Binghamton or a Buffalo or an Oswego and say, you know what, it's the better school, period. Are you seeing that and hearing that?
Absolutely. The SUNY campuses are known for excellence and affordability. And we increasingly are seeing our campuses move up in national rankings, especially around social mobility, helping students who may come in from a low-income background, achieve great things and go on to do extraordinarily well in the economy. And look, in New York, whether it's the semiconductor industry or green jobs or healthcare or education or the arts, SUNY is leading the way, and SUNY graduates like you are accomplishing amazing things.
I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't ask you. I know your name is popping up on short lists for Harvard. They seem to be needing somebody right now to run the college. Any thoughts on that? I read one quote. You said you're happy where you are, but it must be flattering to have your name pop up on these lists.
It's nice to be mentioned, but I love my job at SUNY. It's such an incredible engine of opportunity for New York State. Governor Hochul has been such a strong supporter of the SUNY system. SUNY's on the move, and I'm excited about the work ahead.
And last 20 seconds, budget time. You're getting the funding you needed. I mentioned the governor. You're having some lunch to say, could you give us a little more here and there? Everybody wants money this time of year.
Absolutely. We feel really good. Last year, we got the largest operating aid increase SUNY has gotten in 20 plus years. Really appreciate the governor's commitment. As we talk with the legislature about the budget process, we are hopeful that they can build on top of what the governor has put forward in her executive budget. But I'm hopeful. There's a lot of enthusiasm for SUNY across the legislature.
Well, John King, SUNY Chancellor, we know you're busy. We do appreciate the time you're giving us today. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks so much.
Healthcare workers are looking to see their profession prioritize this legislative session as well. When we come back, we'll hear from one of the major healthcare worker unions on if their concerns are being met and what they'd like to see change. Welcome back to Empire State Weekly. I'm John Gray in Albany. Healthcare workers were on the front lines of the coronavirus pandemic and continue to see shortages and other issues. I spoke with a major healthcare workers union on their priorities this legislative session. Helen Schaub, the interim political director of the 1199 SEIU, joining us now to discuss the legislative priorities coming up this session. Helen, thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
What is the big, if you had to hang your hat on one big issue, what would it be that you're looking at?
For us, it's really the question of equity in Medicaid. For a very long time, Medicaid rates have been flat, and that means that now it only pays for 70% of the actual cost of care for Medicaid recipients. That means that hospitals, nursing homes, other providers are really losing money every time they take care of a Medicaid patient. They do that, of course, because they want to fulfill their mission, but it is creating a huge amount of financial instability. We're seeing hospitals close, we're seeing nursing home wings close, we're seeing consumers who really can't get an appointment with a specialist, have trouble accessing care. And we think that this problem is only going to get worse unless it is addressed at the state level.
For those who don't understand, they hear 70%, they think, well, then you just bill the patient the other 30%, problem solved. It's not that easy, right? Isn't the well dry in a lot of places where the money's not there from an individual who's on Medicaid?
Of course. I mean, under Medicaid, there's very low or no copays and deductibles, that sort of thing, because these are low-income folks who don't have the cash and who need access to care. That's the value of the program, is really making sure that people who can't afford, private insurance are able to get the health care that they need. And right now, Medicaid is not fulfilling its promise to provide that care. And it's hurting not only Medicaid consumers, but really the whole community, right? When a hospital can't afford to stay open, that hurts everybody in that community, whether they have Medicaid or not.
We're seeing, where things are closing down, or in case upstate, we've got a birthing center moving things over to across the river. Staffing becomes a big issue. These are directly connected, aren't they? Because if the nursing homes, the hospitals are not getting enough money, it affects staffing and what you can pay and retention, all those things, correct?
Of course, the institutions, we know that labor costs have risen significantly post-pandemic because they need to be able to pay people more, to retain people, to staff better. And the opposite is happening. People are leaving, and that leaves the folks, the nurses, the other caregivers left behind in a worse position. They can't take care of the people in the way that they know they need to because there's just not enough people to do it. We need the proper Medicaid funding to invest in the staffing, make sure the quality of care is there.
Last 20 seconds and last question. How do you break through when everybody's up there kind of shaking their tin cup this time of year saying, no, fund us, we need the money? How do you break through and get the governor or lawmakers to pay attention?
We're really trying to make the moral case. This is not just a medical issue or budget issue, it's a civil rights issue. It's about access to care. Dr. King said injustice in healthcare is one of the most shocking and inhumane of injustices. We think that's true, and we're trying to make that case and really point to things getting worse in the future if this problem is not addressed.
Helen Schaub with the SEIU, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
Stick around, back with a look at the week ahead in just a bit. By the way, if you have a comment or story idea, please let us know about it. You can email us at news@news10.com. You can also reach out on X, what we used to call Twitter, at WTEN. Finally, on Empire State Weekly, we are continuing to keep an eye on the changes set to come to voting here in New York. Recently proposed legislation would push some elections that are held on the odd years to even years, which would mean more local elections would take place the same year as the larger national races. Now, already, some counties are pushing back on these changes, filing lawsuits to keep them from taking place. We'll keep an eye on these legal challenges to see how it all develops. For now, from all of us here at Empire State Weekly, I'm John Gray in Albany. We'll see you right here next week. And don't forget, you can watch Empire State Weekly all over New York State. Here's a full schedule of Empire State Weekly on 10 TV stations across the great state of New York.